You might have the kind of parents that are like this. Now look, if you'll do right and you'll obey and do what you're supposed to do, you get an ice cream cone. There's some of those kind of parents in here probably right now. Then there's another kind of parent that says, hey, if you do right and you're obedient and you do what you're supposed to, you won't get a whipping. Now, I'm going to tell you, both of them are good. I mean, both of those things are good. The reward for doing right is always good. Even if it doesn't seem like it in the moment, the reward for doing right is always good. But there is two sides of that coin right there. There is, because we know that sin, and that's disobedience against God, always brings negative consequences. We know that. So one reason to try to live victoriously over sin with God's help is to not have to deal with the negative consequences that come with sin. Am I right? It's a good reason. But sometimes if we're not careful, we can hammer that message home so hard, and it does need to be preached. And it should be addressed that sin has negative consequences, and we need to avoid those. It's also good to understand that doing right is worth it. That living obedient to God has its own rewards, and they're not just like, okay, so it's better than the horrible life that sin brings. No. It's really good. It's incredible, as a matter of fact. And there's two prophets that prophesied to the same people at the same time. And it's not like one of them's pessimistic and the other one's optimistic. It's not like one of them, it's not like one of them is Debbie Downer and the other one is, just living on top of the world. That's not what we're talking about here. It's that they are sharing the same message with the same people from two different perspectives. I heard a story recently about these two boys, and one of them was they were brothers. One of them was just a horrible pessimist. Nothing was ever going right. There was nothing positive about life. The other one was an eternal optimist. I mean, you couldn't darken this kid's day if you wanted to. But the one was so pessimistic, he was just impossible to be around. He was just always so negative. The other one didn't really live in reality. He was so optimistic. So they took him to a psychiatrist and said, the parents took him to the psychiatrist and said, can y'all work with them here and get this worked out? And he said, well, I think I can do something here. And so he said, here's what I'm going to do. He said, my plan is, he told the parents this, he said, my plan is that I'm going to take the two boys and we're going to go down this hallway. When we get to the first room, we're going to open up this room. It's full of toys and games and all kinds of great stuff. And I'm going to stop right there with the two boys, and I'm going to tell the pessimistic boy that this is your room and everything in here belongs to you. And he gets to go in that room and see what all's been given to him. And he's going to be overwhelmed with so many toys and stuff. There's no way that he can be pessimistic. And he said, then I'm going to walk his brother down the hall, and down the hall, several rooms down, in that room, we're going to have a giant pile of manure. We're going to put him in that room. And after he sees what his brother got, then he's going to be so disappointed, there's no way he's going to be optimistic about that. And so, sure enough, they did it. They walked down the hallway, left the boy in the first room with all the toys, took the second boy down to the other room, and about an hour later, they came back and they opened the door where all the toys are and stuff, and the boy is sitting in the middle of the floor crying. And the psychiatrist said, what's going on? What's wrong? He said, don't you know all this stuff is yours now? It belongs to you. How can you be crying? He said, I know, but somebody's going to come and take them away, and some of them are going to break, and I'm not going to be able to have them forever. And he's still just as pessimistic as he was before. And the parents look at the psychiatrist, like, hey, what's going on? He said, I don't know. I thought that would work. Well, surely the second kid will be fixed. And so they go down the hall and they open the door, and the second kid is just handful at a time, just digging in this stuff, throwing it over his shoulder. And he's about 3/4 of the way through the pile. And the psychiatrist said, what in the world are you doing? He said, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So there's a big difference between optimism and pessimism. And that's not what we're talking about today. When we were in Haggai, he and Zechariah are preaching to the same people at the same time. And Haggai's message is this: consider your ways. There's some things that you need to think about, and I'm not going to pretend that everybody remembers that message from Haggai, but what Haggai came on the scene and said was, look, you're disappointed and you're down about the temple not being what you remember and all this kind of stuff, but at the same time, you've been building your own paneled, sealed houses and ornate and decorated while God's house lieth waste. And he said, haven't you noticed that when you don't honor God in your life, things don't work out the way that you think they're going to? And he reminds them by encouraging them to consider their ways of the negative side of not following the Lord, not being obedient to God. Zechariah is talking to the same people, prophesying at the same time. But Zechariah's message is from a little bit different angle. Because what Zechariah is going to tell in the 14 chapters of the book that God inspires him to write is Zechariah is going to say to the same people that, look, yes, you need to consider your ways, just like Brother Haggai said, and yes, you need to do everything. But what you need to realize is that until you are ready to receive God's kingdom, God's kingdom cannot come, and you want His kingdom to come. In other words, what Zechariah is going to lay out is that there are wonderful joys and blessings that await those who are seeking God and wanting to follow God and willing to put God first. And yes, he has some warnings in here. And as a matter of fact, we're not going to go through all 14 chapters of the book of Zechariah. And I'm also going to make this acknowledgement, okay? Some of them are weird. In the first 8 chapters of the book of Zechariah, Zechariah has about 8 or 9 dreams in one night. And they're dreams. Kind of like some of the dreams you've had. They're weird. I mean, some bizarre imagery and even some unsettling things. But look, one difference between weird things that you've dreamed and weird things that Zechariah dreamed is that yours might have been bad pizza. We know that Zechariah's dreams were from God because God actually gives an angel to interpret Zechariah's dreams and tell what they mean, much of which is prophetic. But what's interesting is there's these dreams and they're paired together. Like the first dream goes with the 8th dream and the second dream goes with the 7th dream. And so they're kind of used to interpret one another. And we are going to look at what kind of plays out in one of Zechariah's dreams because we don't have the time to go through all of them. But what's amazing is after chapter 8 is done and we get into chapter 9, chapters 9 through 14 of Zechariah's prophecy have everything to do with the coming Messiah. I got to tell you, it's not hard to find Jesus in Zechariah. As a matter of fact, there are so many prophecies directly about Jesus in this 14-chapter book that Zechariah is one of, if not the most quoted Old Testament books in the New Testament. Matthew quotes it, Mark quotes it, John quotes it, Paul quotes it in Ephesians, John the Apostle quotes it in the book of Revelation. I'm just telling you, there are so many New Testament references back to the Old Testament book of Zechariah because there is so much about Jesus in this book. As a matter of fact, one person called Zechariah this, the prologue to the New Testament. And you can tell at this point, I mean, if you're not familiar with your Bible, Zechariah, Malachi, Matthew chapter 1. That's how close we're getting, revelation-wise, to Jesus actually making his appearance in human flesh. And so it makes total sense that as we get toward the end of the Old Testament here, more and more, I think you might be able to say it like this, the closer you get to the brightness of the Father's glory appearing on earth, the more he shines in these Old Testament books. And that's the way it is in the book of Zechariah here. And especially there at the end. I'm not going to preach out of 9 through 14 this morning. But let me point out a couple things that might just trigger some memories of things relating to Jesus Christ. Look at Zechariah chapter 9 with me, if you would, please. Zechariah chapter 9. Zechariah 9, verse 9, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, and riding upon an ass and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. You say, why is this significant that Jesus is coming riding on a donkey? Well, if you know about the prophecies concerning his coming in power and great glory, he doesn't come on a donkey, he comes on a white horse. This is different. Well, when did Jesus ever come riding on a donkey then? Well, you and I would call it Palm Sunday, which isn't a biblical name given to it. But it was before the crucifixion, and the Bible would help us to understand it to be his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Where in fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy before his crucifixion, he has his disciples go and get a donkey. Some of you might remember the story. If somebody asks, why are you taking this donkey? You say, the Lord hath need of it. And you get that donkey, and Jesus was going to ride on that donkey, and ahead of him there were multitudes of people lining the roadway, laying out palm branches before him, crying out, Hosanna, blessed is he who cometh in the name of the Lord. And there he goes riding right through the eastern gate of the city of Jerusalem. And guess what? He's going to ride through that eastern gate again one of these days. Now, some of you that have done your homework, you know it's concreted up. When the Arabs took occupation of Jerusalem, they said that prophecy isn't happening on our watch, and they completely concreted up the eastern gate of the city of Jerusalem. It's not going to stop the Savior, though. Amen. Not really concerned about it. Not really concerned about it. But it was Zechariah who prophesied of that triumphal entry into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. Turn to chapter 11 with me. Chapter 11. He says in verse number 10, and I took my staff, even beauty, and cut it asunder, that I might break my covenant, which I had made with all the people, and it was broken in that day. And so the poor of the flock that waited upon me knew that it was the word of the Lord. And I said unto them, if ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said unto me, cast it unto the potter, a goodly price that I was prized at of them. And I took 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. Zechariah prophesied that there would be a 30-piece of silver transaction that would happen in the temple of God over the price determined of the Messiah. Can I tell you that happened? It might have been behind closed doors in a chamber that nobody else could see, but Judas Iscariot went to the high priest and the chief rulers, and he determined the price of Jesus to be 30 pieces of silver, and they paid that to him for his betrayal of the Lord that was prophesied of in the book of Zechariah. I'm not going to have time to go through all of it, but those last chapters of the book of Zechariah, there's an overarching theme that goes through those chapters, and the theme of those chapters, I did think about preaching this, but the theme of those chapters is a shepherd who actually gets killed for his sheep. And once again, a picture, or at the very least a type, of the good shepherd that came and gave his life for us. I want to go back to chapter 1, if you would please. Zechariah chapter 1. In verse number 1. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, The Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers. Now, I'm going to try not to pause too often here, but I don't want to just overlook things that are going to be very helpful to us. I'm glad that God does not hold me accountable for anyone but me. They had every reason to understand that God had been displeased with their fathers. I mean, these people are the very ones coming out of captivity after 70 years in Babylon and Persia, and now they're getting to come back to their land. It was very clear that God had been sore displeased with their fathers. But here's what Zechariah is going to say. Just because God was displeased with your fathers doesn't mean he wants to be displeased with you. Now here's what that means. A cycle has to be broken. You know, in so many ways and more than I can count, I'm a very blessed person. I'm blessed that I got to be born into the home that I was born in. I'm blessed to be brought up with godly parents. But my dad's story is not the same as my story. I'm a beneficiary of my dad's choices. Now, don't make any mistake. My dad could make all good choices and God would still hold me accountable for mine. But what I'm saying is, I get the benefit of blessings based upon choices that were made by my father. Watch this. But my dad was a cycle breaker. What I mean is, my dad didn't have the upbringing that I had. My dad wasn't brought up with the Word of God in his life. I mean, just little bits and pieces along the way as he rode the bus to church with my cousin and you know, just little things like that. But there wasn't the constant influence in my dad's life from parents who lived out the Word of God or acted in a relationship with God. My dad's story was much different than mine. And let me just tell you, it's very easy for us to repeat what we've seen. That is the natural course of life. is that we repeat what has been done to us, what we have witnessed, what we have seen. When I sit down with a couple in premarital counseling, one of our first questions is, tell me about your mom and dad. Why do we talk about that? Well, because there's a likelihood that they're going to behave in marriage like they've seen marriage be before their eyes growing up. And look, it's not even like it's so hard for us to understand. We just typically gravitate to what we are familiar with. But let me tell you something. There is a better way, and that better way is God's way. And even the best of parents don't do everything God's way. And so while we get to take the good that we've seen in others and learn from it, sometimes the greatest lessons that we learn are actually from the mistakes of others, if we choose to do so. But I'll be honest with you, we're horrible about learning from other people's mistakes. We're horrible about it. Because sometimes we think, well, yeah, I saw what they did and I saw what happened, but I think I can do the same thing and the same result won't happen. And look, we can't help but chuckle about that and think that's kind of funny. But what's not funny is when you see that over and over and over again. When you see somebody who has seen where this road leads to, and they're like, I'm going to go down the same road because I think it's the Emerald City this time. And it's not. It's not. As a matter of fact, there's a verse this past year that I got to preach in several youth camps that's found in Proverbs chapter 30 that says, there is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. In other words, they're very prideful, and so prideful that the author there in Proverbs 30, whose name was Agur, so prideful, in fact, that Agur thought surely the only way they could be this arrogant and this prideful is because they can't see. Their eyes must be closed. And how amazed he was that somebody could be that arrogant and their eyes wide open. And what he's saying in that passage is, you've seen how this goes. And could you still be so prideful as to think that you can do the same thing and that won't happen to you? But the reality is this: we are horrible about learning from mistakes. Look, we have a hard enough time learning from our own mistakes. But sometimes we miss the valuable resource of learning from other people's mistakes. I didn't know if I was going to get into this or not, but I might as well. We're all here. Can I tell you that socialism is a mistake? It's a mistake. The fact is, it's a mistake that many countries have already made. And the results are obvious. And I know how people go, well, you can't look at this country, you got to look at this country. Well, if we're going to put this in practice, shouldn't we kind of look at the worst case scenario and learn some things from that? And then learn that the best case scenarios are not as much socialist as some would like to make them. And I'm not trying to preach a political message. The Bible does have something to say about socialism. As a matter of fact, the first church even tried it and fell flat on their face because it's a great idea. No, I mean it. It's a great idea, but there's one problem that'll cause it to never work, and that's the sinful hearts of mankind. If everybody did the maximum amount of production and the maximum amount of input and the least possible withholding necessary, then it would be a great idea and it would be great. But because of the sinful hearts of people, man will always take the most and give the least. And so it doesn't work. And we're foolish if we can't learn from those mistakes. And there's so many more examples that I could go to, but for sake of time, let me read here. He says in verse number 3, "Therefore say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts." Verse 4, "Be ye not as your fathers, unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye now from your evil ways and from your evil doings. But they did not hear nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord." Verse 5, "Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers?" In other words, what was preached to them, did it not come true? "And they returned and said, Like as the Lord of hosts thought to do unto us, according to our ways and according to our doings, so hath he dealt with us." So what he starts off this book saying is, look, you ought to at least know one thing by now. God does what he says. If you don't know anything else about God, you ought to know this by now. God does what he says. Your fathers questioned that, and where are they? And the prophets that told them, they're gone, but what they told them is still true. It still remains. This is something we need to understand. That how God responds to us is not based upon the individuality or the personalities of people that have already gone by and found God's word to be true. They are always based upon what God says, and what God says is always the same in every generation. Every single generation. Turn to Zechariah chapter 6. Zechariah chapter 6. Look at verse number 9. When we're talking about what God says comes to pass, this is pretty exciting right here. Zechariah chapter 6, verse number 9. "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Take of them of the captivity, even of Heldai, of Tobijah, and of Jedaiah, which are come from Babylon, and come thou the same day, and go into the house of Josiah the son of Zephaniah. Then take silver and gold, and make crowns, and set them upon the head of Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest." I'm going to ask you to look up here for just a second. There's some things that I want to explain. When we read in the book of Haggai 2 weeks ago, we read about these two figures. One was called Zerubbabel, who was the governor over the people who went back to Jerusalem from Persia. So Zerubbabel was the government leader, and Joshua was the high priest over the people. So we've got a governmental figure, and we've got a high priest that have now returned with the people. And in Zechariah chapter 6, and in verse number 11, Zechariah tells them, here's what I want you to do. Now, this is part of the vision that he's seeing. But the word of the Lord comes to him and says, I want you to go in, I want you to fashion crowns, and I want you to put them on the head, now watch this, of Joshua. Now, if you're reading this and understanding what's going on, you might have expected him to say Zerubbabel. And the reason is because Joshua was already the high priest. Zerubbabel was the governing leader. He was the governmental leader. So it seems like if anybody is to become king, which by the way, that's what putting the crowns on him indicates, if anybody is going to be made the king, it makes sense that the governmental leader who is Zerubbabel, would be the one made king. Now, it wasn't like God doesn't like Zerubbabel. God's using Zerubbabel in amazing ways. As a matter of fact, it's in the book of Zechariah that God has Zechariah say to Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel, in regards to rebuilding my temple, here's what you need to know. It is not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. In other words, if anything's going to be accomplished, it's going to have to be by my power that it is accomplished. And Zerubbabel was the man that God said that to. Zerubbabel was the man that God was using to organize this people and to organize them in a governmental way to lead them in the work that God had for them to do. But when it came time to fashion a crown and place it upon the head of someone, Zerubbabel, the government leader, was not the one who received the crown. Now hold that in your head for just a second. I'm going to come back to it. You might also like to know, if you don't already, that there was a time decades earlier that God had removed the crown, the royalty, from one particular line of the house of David and said, no more. No one from this line, not David's line, but this branch of David's line, no one will ever wear my crown over my kingdom again in this place. It will not happen, and he cut them off. So, for all of these years that they've been in captivity and all the way up until this place, Israel has not had a king. There hasn't been anyone coronated. There's been governors and things like that, but there has been no king. And now all of a sudden, Zechariah sees in this vision that God says, I want you to fashion crowns. I want you to take them in. I want you to put them on the head of Joshua, the high priest. Now let me tell you why this is significant, and I'm going to get pretty excited about this. This is the first time you ever see these two offices come together in one individual. The high priest had never been the king before. And the king had never been the high priest. As a matter of fact, Samuel got in trouble with God because he offered a sacrifice as king when that was the job of the prophet to do. And so these offices had never come together. But now all of a sudden, in this vision, God says, I want you to go in, fashion crowns, set them on the head of Joshua, because the high priest is now going to be the king. Now here's what's significant about this. There's so many things that are significant about this. Number one, there's no accident of the high priest's name. His name is Joshua. In Hebrew, they would pronounce it Yeshua. The Greeks would say it Jesus. Now watch this. Joshua in the vision of Zechariah is not Jesus. Because this Joshua, his father is named. He's of a line of high priests here. That's why he has this office right here. No. So this is prophetic. In other words, a lot of what happens in Old Testament prophecy has an immediate fulfillment right when the prophet says it, but a later application to a coming fulfillment. So in that moment, when Zechariah goes forward to fulfill the vision of the Lord, and he fashions these crowns and he places them on the head of Joshua, then here's this man Joshua who, watches so good. He's already the high priest. And now he becomes king and high priest. Same office, one individual. And his name's Joshua, Yeshua, or the Greeks would say Jesus. As a matter of fact, it's only going to be a couple books of the Bible, now hundreds of years, but a couple books of the Bible before an angel appears unto a carpenter and says, fear not to take unto thee Mary to be thy wife, because she's highly favored among women, and what has been conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. She's not been unfaithful to you, Joseph. She's done you nothing wrong. She's actually going to bear a son, and when she bears that son, thou shalt call his name Jesus, or Yeshua, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now, here's where it gets real exciting. Isaiah prophesied that when he came, he wouldn't be a king, he would be a prince. He called him the Prince. Micah did the same thing. The Prince of Peace. Because, well, he didn't come as a king. You remember when those three kings came from the east and they came into Jerusalem? You say, how do you know there are three kings? Everybody knew there was three kings. Everybody knew they were wise men from the east. I mean, procession and all that kind of stuff. That's what happens when a king shows up. That's what happens when somebody noteworthy arrives. But can I remind you, this wasn't the second coming in power and great glory. This was the first coming. This was the donkey riding, not the horse riding. And we can argue about this if you want to, but there is a difference in notoriety between riding on a donkey and riding on a horse. It's a completely different picture. That breath that comes flying out of that horse's nostrils and the noise they make. And then, it's like, you hear that horse neigh at full gallop, and then you got a whole, cavalry of horses, and that's an overwhelming sound. Different than, I've been around donkeys a lot growing up in Kentucky. And I'm telling you, you're not like, that's power right there. No, you're like, that's annoying. Please stop. Please stop. A few years ago, when I was going back home and doing some dove hunting with my father every year, we were hunting this dove field, and I picked this spot on the edge of this field, and there was a donkey in the field right behind me. And if that donkey could see me, it would not shut up. And it was so annoying, I found a different spot. I'm like, I've got to get out of here. There is a different, can we agree with this? There's a difference between a donkey and a horse. The donkey is more humble than the horse. I'm not saying it's a bad animal. I mean, they're strong, pretty fierce fighters. In Kentucky, they put them in with cows and horses because if a coyote comes into the field after a cow or something like that, donkey will tear it up. So I'm not saying they're like just insignificant animals. What I'm saying is there's a difference. And there was a difference from his first coming to his second coming. Second coming, power and great glory. But his first coming, meek, lowly, humble. I know that the Magi, the wise men, showed up and said, where is he who is born the King of the Jews? Because that's what had been prophesied. But here's what you need to know. He didn't show up as king. He showed up as a prince. Meaning, with a prince, the king title is coming. The coronation is coming, but the time is not yet. He grew up in wisdom and stature. He lived a perfect, sinless life. It was about the time that he went to Calvary that we realized the real office that he came to fulfill in his first coming. It wasn't King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He didn't have that on his vesture yet. But they hung him on an old rugged cross. And the first words that we have recorded that he spoke from the cross were these. forgive them. They know not what they do. Those aren't the words of a king, but they are the words of a high priest. Amen. A go-between. Yep. And Jesus came to be our high priest, our go-between, our mediator. He didn't come as a king to deal with the problems of his people's enemies. He came to deal with the problem of his people's sin. That's what a high priest does. You see, the reason the crown was placed on Joshua and not Zerubbabel is because his first coming, listen, how do I say this? He will be king, but he had to be high priest first. He came to fulfill two offices, and guess what? He has a perfect lineage for both of them. He is a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, Genesis chapter 14, and also in the book of Hebrews. But also, he will sit on the throne of his father David. And those two offices are going to come together in his second coming. But for him to be king, he first had to be the high priest. And that's why Zechariah was told in this vision, you make crowns and you set them on the head of Joshua, the high priest. You see, he's already come, he's already died, he's already offered himself as a sacrifice for my sin and for your sin. We already have a great high priest. Now what we're looking for is that coronation. Once again, I didn't have anything to do with picking the songs today. But the last one we sang as a congregation was this. Is it the crowning day? Is it the crown? What in the world's a crowning day? I don't know if it's a crowning day. What is a crowning day? I'll tell you, it's the day Christ is coronated. As what? King of kings and Lord of lords. His kingdom is not of this earth. And we do know that his kingdom is already in existence, but it hasn't come to earth because the king hasn't come to earth. But he will one day. He will one day. And just any day, we're going to be there for a coronation service. Crown him with many crowns, the Lamb upon his throne. Hark how the heavenly anthem drowns all music but its own. Awake my soul and sing of him who died for me, and hail him as the matchless King who lives eternally. I'm telling you, that day's coming. That day's coming. You want to find Christ in the book of Zechariah? Just read. I didn't even talk about the righteous branch that's talked about in Zechariah, and the good shepherd, and so many more. But I'm going to tell you, I couldn't get past this. Zechariah chapter 6, verse number 9. Here's Joshua. Well, that's interesting. That's kind of like Yeshua, who's already the high priest, who gets coronated king. And for the first time, the prophet, the priest, and the king are all the same person. And this is a picture of one who came to be our high priest, one who will be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords just any time. Here's a great summary, if you will, of this thought. Philippians chapter 2, verse number 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of man. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You know what that defines? His work as our great high priest. But he doesn't stop there. Next verse. Wherefore God hath also highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's the coronation. I don't know if you caught this. Every knee should bow. Every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The truth is, when all is said and done, every knee will have bowed. Every tongue will have confessed that he is Lord. The difference, friend, in where you spend eternity has to do with this question. Are you going to do that now? Or are you going to do that after it's too late? Every knee will bow. Every tongue shall confess. But would you confess him as Lord now? Or will you wait till after it's too late? I challenge you. Do it now. Call upon him now. Today is the day of salvation. Now is the accepted time. He is your high priest to make reconciliation between God and man. And what a joy it will be to see him return as your king. You would much rather be his than on the other side, I assure you. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word this morning. I pray that you'd encourage